Hey pioneers, and welcome back. The International World Tour is over. Argentina, Munich, I even survived the beer gardens, somehow. Pro tip, if the beer is not being served by the liter, you are being scammed. But enough traveling, it's time to put this nuclear power into use. We've got more electricity than sense, and that means only one thing. Phase 5 is here. Ficsite Trigons, aka the Toblerones of Satisfactory. Pointy, probably delicious, confusing, let's get building, or failing spectacularly. Both are fun. In order to do these pointy things, we need some. And so far I haven't mined a single node of some, so let's get some of those. I was checking the map, and I know that some is kind of limited, so I don't want to use all of it. I even don't know how much I should be using. So I decided to go for all of the northern nodes. This one might be a little bit tricky because I already prepared a belt to take it over here, but that train station is too small. I don't want to be using the same train station for several materials. So I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I take the belt over here on the north and we go all this way. I will be destroying this beautiful biome, but stuff that happens. And I think that there are plenty of slugs there. I hope not, because yes. That will be troublesome, because I will have to collect every single one of them. But well, the idea is taking a train up the north, collecting all of these some, and these two, maybe I can build them. So I already prepared a design. It's nothing complex, to be honest, compared to what we have been doing. Total amount we will be getting is 3,000 out of those nodes. And as I'm going to automate every single item in the game, that includes the ores. So here I will do a load balancer, 5 will go to the dimensional depot, and then with a constructor we will be doing the reanimated sun. That again, some will go to the dimensional depot. A little amount will go to make some fluctuators. You don't really need this much. I mean, I never mined some and I've been able to get here, so 2.83 is more than enough. And then the rest, I decided I have still a lot of aluminum, but I don't want to use all of it. So this is kind of half of what I've got left, maybe less than half. Just a little bit of aluminum, and the rest I will be doing with Caterium that I will have to make from scratch. Unfortunately, this number is kind of awful. We get 1200 from a pure node, and I need 1221, so I will have to grab it from 2 nodes. But yeah, all in all, this is not that complex. All of these will be load balanced with my programmable load balancers that are amazing. For example, this division over here, 133 and 2.91. To do a load balancer with those numbers, you need to divide the belt in 24,000 equal parts. That might sound insane, but with my blueprint, it's just placing the blueprint and a couple of lifts and it's already done. So that will be fun. So we got an overall idea, and now I will start with probably what's going to be the most annoying thing, that is building the train. Anyway, I haven't built trains since 1.1 released. I think that with the auto connect, it might be easier. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. A lot of time later, the railway is done. And with the blueprint auto connect, it was way faster and it even looks cooler. The curves are really smooth. It's hard to realize when one track is starting and the other one is ending. I'm really glad with the result. Still, it made me make a stupid error, because as I had the blueprint auto connect, I made the pillars as far away as I could, meaning all of the tracks are the maximum length. But I forgot that I also carry power underneath, and the cables can't go that long. So, well, I had to improvise, and I came with this blueprint, an extender, that it doesn't look that good, but I needed to carry power, and I wasn't going to redo everything from scratch. Yeah, I know that the railway also carries power, but each factory has its own independent grid. I'm really organized with power consumption and connections, and also the grid that goes through the railway. It's my unstable grid. and I won't be powering machines on my unstable grid. They need to go to the stable one. So well, mistakes were made, but all in all, I think it looks pretty good. Now let me show you the train station that receives all of this sum, because as usual, I'm Nico and I overdid it. Welcome to my train station. Yeah, it's a little bit scary. I definitely overdid it, but I'm loving it. Let's forget about the sinks, those are temporary, are just to test the system. And let's start breaking it down. I won't explain in detail how all of these modules work, because I explained it in previous videos and I don't want to repeat myself. But for starters, we have 4 platforms, and each one of them is connected through 2 belts to one industrial storage container, and these have only one output connected. This is to ensure that the speed at which the train station unloads is faster than the speed in which we use the materials, because as you see right now it's stopped because it's loading and unloading, and that can bring issues. So by using 2 belts you ensure that everything will go the right way. Now all of the sum is coming by train except one node, the one that's nearby inside a cave over there. I brought it with a belt. So this belt is being equally spread between the 4 freight stations so that we still keep everything balanced. That will explain everything up to this point. Now, what is this thing we have over here? That's exactly the same as this thing we have over here. These are belt compressors. We have a total of 3000 sum, and I'm using MK5 belts, so if we divide it by 780, that means that we will have 3 belts that are absolutely saturated and 1 belt that is at 84% capacity, and I want to rebuild those belts. I want to have 3 belts saturated and 1 at 84 capacity. So this guy over here creates 1 saturated belt and gives 1 that carries the rest. This guy over here creates another saturated belt and gives us 1 belt that carries the rest. Now the 2 rest belts go to another belt compressor that gives us yet another saturated belt and the belt that has 84%, and that shouldn't be there. So that created us these 3 belts that are always working at 780, nice and clean. But you might wonder, what is that? So, what's the deal? The last belt that works at 84%, usually what would happen is that 84% of the time will be working at max capacity at 780, and the rest of the time it will work at 0. That's because the trains comes in batches, so when the train comes, the belt is saturated. When there's no train, like right now, it will go up to 0. But I don't like that. Why? Because I don't like it. There's no explanation. It might bring issues if you're trying to do something really specific. It's not my case. But I want to have even belts all of the time working at the same speed. So what you are seeing here is something that I invented. This gizmo is a belt limiter. This belt that its max capacity should be 780, right now is 660. Because if we do 3000 minus 780 times 3, the rest is 660. So if we go and check the belt over here, it's not a saturated belt, but it will be always constant, no matter where the train is. And that's pretty awesome. I can't believe I pulled this off. But while it doesn't work perfectly, let me explain first how this thing works. Let's use a high-tech program to explain what I did. We have a belt that has on average 660, but its max capacity is 780. And we want to slow this belt down. We want the max capacity of this belt to be 660, so that it always moves smoothly. The first thing I thought about is, well, what if on this point over here, we add a priority merger, and we inject over here 120 of other material, and we prioritize it. So this 120 will always be going that way, So this belt from the 780, it's already spending 120 in another thing. So this will slow down our belt from 780 to 660 because we have these guys getting in the way of our material. So far so good, but what do we inject? I mean, I could add limestone over here and then remove the limestone, but that would be kind of cheap, and I don't want to be wasting limestone and then sinking it. So then I realized that I have a really cool programmable load balancer that I invented, so why don't we use one of those? On this point over here, I set up a programmable load balancer that extracts 120 and reinjects it into the input. So this has 120 over here, and we would end up having 660 right there. Because if we do 660 plus 120, this means that this segment of belt is going at 780. So when calculating the load balancer, I had to build a load balancer that divides 780 into 660 and 120, and I'm using the same material to limit the belt just by grabbing a piece of it and reinjecting it onto the same belt. It worked. It's a brilliant idea, right? Well, it doesn't kind of work. I got a 1.8% error. That it's not that much, but I still had an error. And I spent hours trying to diagnose this. It makes no sense. I think it's a bug on the game. This load balancer, I built it huge so that I could place monitors on each segment of the belt. And it seems like a bug because this belt wasn't getting saturated, even though I had extra materials in here. And the belt speed was correct. I upgraded it to MK6. I mean, the load balancer wasn't slowing the materials. I don't know what's going on. Pretty sure it's a bug, but well, you can't always blame the game once you don't manage to achieve something you want. So at the end, what I did is, well, instead of limiting to 660, I limited to 665. That means it moves a slightly bit faster than I want, and every now and then it will stop for a really short amount of time. But it's better than what we originally had, and it's almost constant, the 665. So we think that all in all, it was a pretty good idea. Going back to the game, this belt over here is the one that has 660 on average, and that we want to slow down. Over here we have the priority merger that prioritizes this belt, and we can see that every time one sum gets into here, it's stopping this belt just a little bit. Then we have this belt over here that ends up saturated, 780, that was the idea. As this is a load balancer with feedback that is saturated, I had to upgrade that little chunk of belt to MK6, because if not, it wouldn't have worked. And well, that's the end result. Here we can see how I'm extracting just a little bit of materials and reinjected it into the input. And on the output, we have the 665 that oscillates a little bit into between 664 and 65, but well, we wanted 660. So this is going slightly faster, and every now and then it takes a really long time. It stops and then restarts. So yes, it isn't perfect, but I'm pretty glad with it because I got what I wanted. I wanted smooth belts, and this is actually pretty smooth. What do we do now? Well, I will stop the miners so that I don't have some annoying me, and let's continue building the factory. And the design ended up being harder to build than I thought. Well, hard to keep load balanced, but I will die on that hill. So I decided to go for it. We had finished over this pod. This is our belt limiter. And after that, we go directly to a load balancer that's extracting 5 and 655. That's because I wanted to send 5 to a dimensional depot, and we will work with the rest. So those 5 go to this belt. And I already created an output management over here. I had a slot that I hadn't used. So this will be a sushi belt. And we have our SAM, reanimated SAM, fluctuators, Ficsite ingots, and Trigons. So that's one of all of the outputs that's already done. Let's continue with this nonsense. The rest, the 655, go to this module of 5 constructors. That, well, 6 constructors? 6, counting is hard, that are doing some reanimated SAM. Then we had the other compressed belt, 3 compressed belts, and each one of them goes to a module of 8 constructors. Yep. And all of those outputs get merged over this belt with the outputs of these constructors. So we already have the reanimated SAM. And here is when the nonsense starts. So we go to this balancer that divides 18.75 and 730. That would be these 2 on one side and these other 2 on the other. I made the part on the top. So we have 18.75, which go to this other load balancer. I had to divide it into 2 because my program couldn't work with that ratio. I don't know why, but these 2 are blueprints. I mean, it's not too hard to build them. And this, well, divides us, it gives us our 1.75 and 17. The 1.75 goes to this output line, to the sushi belt, that goes to the output handling, and the rest goes to this other sushi line that goes to the manufacturer that's creating the SAM fluctuators. As we have only one and everything is balanced, I'm putting all of the 3 inputs with one belt. We also need steel pipes and steel and wire, and I'm creating both of them. And I'm not doing the ingots, I'm using some ingots that I had lying around. So these factories all load balancer and just a little bit of machines, and I still have to balance even more. Mistakes were made, but let's go for it. Well, I've done several things in a row. We have some more balancers, because this factory is all balancers. And I place all of the converters on this circular structure. I think it looks pretty neat, and it gave me an opportunity to play with curved belts. I haven't had the chance to use them too much. So it looks pretty good. I don't know what I'll be doing in the middle. I'll have to come up with something because there's too much space over here. But well, I'm happy with the result. And then the design required 50 refineries. I always design without having in mind, hey, that's something huge. So well, it's all surrounded by refineries that are doing our Caterium ingots. Place a cool water tower over here. The water is coming from that little river that I'm about to dry it out. I don't think I have space to add another one. Yeah, I will have to start bringing my water from somewhere else. And yeah, that's basically it. I built the biggest balancer I've made in my whole life. This one over here, it's really long. So what does this do? It splits up 133 ingots to one side and 2.91 to the other one. The thing is that to achieve these ratios, you have to divide the belt into 24,463 equal parts. That is being done by this thing over here. Now, it might be huge, but this was done in like 5 minutes or less because it's my blueprint and I've got my program that tells me how to connect these lifts. So it's actually pretty fast. What took longer was testing it, because how do I know if this works? I need to dump 24,463 materials on the input and check that I get 523 on one side and well 23,940 on the other, which I did. But if we do 24,463 divided 780, because this is in MK5 belts, that's 31 minutes, half an hour it took this load balancer to be tested. But well, it works. And now the last module, I squeezed it over there, that I had a gap. This is where the actual Trigons are being made. I had to cut a slice over here and get really close to this building, because I started placing machines before realizing that I needed a little bit more space. But well, everything fit. And while I was doing this, I realized, hey, this factory is kind of big for what it's doing. And then I said, well, what do we need Ficsite Trigons for? And apparently you need it for space elevator parts that I usually craft 0.5 or 1 per minute, because I take a lot of time playing the game, so eventually the space elevator gets filled up. It's also used for Ficsonium fuel rods, that I will do in a future, but I don't think I need that many. And neural quantum processors, that again, I might need some, but not that many. I'm doing 850 Trigons per minute. I think that maybe with 200 or 300 would have been more than enough. I don't know why I'm doing this much. This will stand as the monument to pioneer stupidity. But well, at least it looks pretty good. All of the machines have been placed, and now I need to power it up, check that it works, and decorate it. Let's go. that's how you are not supposed to cut a song. But well, the song was too long and I didn't want to find another one. Another factory is done. I'm really happy with how it's looking. Ended up looking pretty dope. First time I use Mercer spheres as decoration, but I have like 70. I'm not going to use all of them, so I can start wasting them silly ways. Everything ended up working on the first attempt, which was kind of surprising. I was expecting more issues. The only thing that didn't go exactly how I imagined is this belt limiter. I mean, we have an average of 600 over here. And I assumed, well, it's going to be going at 665 for a couple of minutes and then cut off for some seconds. But it's not exactly like that. Sometimes it works for over 20 minutes in a row and then cuts for a longer time. So I might end up accumulating more materials than I expected over here. Well, right now we are in 25, but this got absolutely filled. So just in case, I added a little storage container, because I don't want the materials to start piling up. But well, everything is done and I'm really happy. What's next? I have no idea. I guess we could do the biochemical sculptures. It doesn't seem that hard. We already have the Trigons and we would only need this assembly director system. Supercomputers I have, so I would have to do these ones, and all of this is pretty basic. So maybe that's the next factory, but I don't know. For the time being, resting and continuing in a couple of hours. If you like this type of content, please consider supporting the channel just by leaving a like or a comment. It really helps with the algorithm. I'm not getting that much views. Anyway, it's not the objective, but I would like if I got some more. So just leave a comment, even if you don't know what to comment. Just tell me, what's your favorite food? For me, it would be asado. That's the Argentinian barbecue, but we do it a little bit different with real coal, and well, the quality of meat in Argentina is really good. And it's not only about eating, it's about the whole experience. You gather with friends and family from before you turn on the fire. Maybe somebody brings a salad, somebody brings a wine. It's the whole process since you cook it and you eat it, and it's something really good. Highly recommended. What about you? What's your favorite food? Hope you guys had fun. If you had any doubts about anything I made, just leave me a question and I'll answer it. I love talking about this game. And I'll see you all on the next one.